The sun hung low in the western sky, pouring its golden light across the parched land, and the wind carried the dry scent of dust and sagebrush as the cowboy made his slow ride back toward his barn. His horse's hooves beat a steady rhythm on the hard earth, but his mind was restless. Life on the frontier had never been easy, and loneliness was a companion he knew well. Each day was a battle for survival, where the cattle needed tending, the fences mending, and the endless cycle of work never ceased. Yet on this particular evening, something different stirred in the air. As he neared the far side of his land, he caught sight of movement near the creek bed, just beyond the barn. At first, he thought it might be a stray calf or perhaps a coyote searching for scraps, but as he drew closer, the figure took shape, small, fragile, human. The cowboy dismounted and approached slowly, his hand brushing against the worn leather holster at his side out of habit, though something in his heart told him there was no danger here. The figure was a child, a native boy, no older than 9 or 10, his skin covered in dust, his ribs visible beneath a tattered shirt, his eyes wide with hunger and exhaustion. He had clearly not eaten for days, and when he tried to stand, his legs trembled like a sapling in the wind. The cowboy crouched down and spoke softly, his voice carrying the weight of compassion. "Easy, son. Ain't no harm here. You're safe now." The boy looked up, fear mixed with desperate need, but his eyes said more than words ever could. He was starving. Without hesitation, the cowboy lifted him gently, cradling the frail body in his arms as though he were his own kin. Back at the barn, he set the boy on a hay bale and fetched what little food he had left. A slice of bread, some beans, and a jug of water. The boy devoured it slowly, as if savoring every bite, his hands trembling with weakness, but his spirit quietly roaring back to life. The cowboy didn't ask questions. He didn't need to. He knew well enough the hard truth of this land: scarcity, displacement, and the endless cycle of conflict that had left too many children abandoned in the wilderness. Yet as he watched the boy's strength return bit by bit, he felt something stir deep inside him, something he hadn't felt in years: purpose. That night, as the stars blanketed the vast sky and coyotes sang their mournful songs, the cowboy kept watch from the barn door. The boy slept soundly for the first time in who knows how long, wrapped in an old wool blanket. The cowboy's gaze wandered from the sleeping child to the horizon. He wondered what kind of world could leave a child to suffer like this, and though he couldn't change the past, he knew he had changed this boy's present. He had given him a chance to live, and in doing so, the cowboy's own spirit felt renewed. He didn't know what tomorrow would bring. He didn't know that the single act of kindness he had shown that child would ripple outward into something far greater than he ever imagined. For sometimes, the smallest gestures of compassion carry the power to shake the earth itself, and by the time the next day's sun rose over the desert, the cowboy would come face to face with a sight that would leave him forever changed. Morning came with a blaze of gold stretching across the horizon. The cowboy rose with the dawn, as he always did, but the air felt heavier that day, filled with a silence that carried weight. He fed his horse, stoked the fire, and poured himself a tin cup of black coffee, unaware that destiny had been riding toward him all night long. As the boy stirred awake and sat up on the hay, the cowboy gave him another piece of bread and a gentle pat on the shoulder. "Eat up, son. Today's going to be a better day than yesterday." But even as the words left his mouth, the cowboy sensed something unusual. The ground began to tremble, not much, just a faint vibration, but enough for an old rider to recognize. Hooves, many of them. He stepped outside the barn, shading his eyes against the blazing sun, and his breath caught in his chest. Stretching across the open plain, riding in formation as far as the eye could see, were warriors, 200 strong. Mounted on powerful horses, their faces steady and unyielding, their long hair catching the sunlight, they rode in silence. At the front were chiefs, their feathered headdresses gleaming white against the desert sky. They advanced until they filled the space before the cowboy's barn, rows upon rows, their presence so immense it seemed to bend the air itself. Dust swirled around their horses' hooves, and the sheer magnitude of their numbers made the cowboy's heart pound in his chest. The boy stepped out of the barn behind him, his small frame silhouetted by the rising sun. He looked at the warriors and then at the cowboy, and without a word, the truth revealed itself. The boy was one of theirs. The warriors had come not with weapons drawn, but with gratitude in their hearts. The chief at the front raised his spear in a gesture of respect, his voice deep and steady as he spoke across the silence. "You gave life to one of our own. You showed mercy where others would have turned away. For that we honor you." The cowboy stood rooted to the earth, humbled by the enormity of it all. He had not sought recognition or reward. He had simply acted on the only code he knew. A man does what's right, even when no one's watching. Yet here he was, facing an army that had come not for battle, but to stand in silent witness to his kindness. The boy ran forward, greeted by the warriors with embraces and relieved smiles. He was safe now, no longer lost, and his people had found him. But before leaving, the chief guided his horse closer to the cowboy. Their eyes met, one man from the world of settlers, the other from the world of the native plains, and for a long moment, no words were needed. Respect had bridged the gap between two worlds divided by history. The chief finally spoke. "Today you are not alone. Remember this." With that, the warriors turned their horses, their formation flowing like a river across the plain, their presence fading into the horizon until only dust remained in the morning air. The cowboy stood silently, his heart heavy with awe. What he had done for one starving child had returned to him as a memory that would last his lifetime. A reminder that kindness, even in its smallest form, could shake the world and draw 200 warriors to his barn. As he turned back inside, the barn felt a little less empty, the land a little less lonely. He realized that life wasn't just about surviving, it was about the bonds we create, the compassion we share, and the courage to do what's right even when it's hard. And to everyone watching this story, let it be a reminder. One good deed can ripple further than you ever imagine. Never underestimate the power of kindness. If this story touched your heart, remember to subscribe to the channel for more powerful tales of courage, compassion, and the human spirit. Your journey with us is just beginning, and the next story may